Good evening and welcome to your Valley Sports Plug. This is our 2023 Arizona Diamondbacks season review Heat Check podcast live. It is Monday, November 11th, 2023. I'm Chris Patrick, and joining me this evening, Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman. What's up, fellas?
Chris, how we doing, man? The tears, they've been shed, the emotions, we've gone through them. We had to give ourselves a couple of days after that tough Game 5 loss, losing to the Texas Rangers, who are your 2023 MLB World Series champions. But we're here to talk about the 2023 National League champions, our favorite, the Arizona Diamondbacks. I'm ready to look at what awesome and amazing things happened this past season with the D-backs. So let's get it going, man. But Tallman, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing great, fellas. Glad to be here talking about something positive. God, but good to be here. I was at that Game 5. I was maybe sad for a minute, and then you just had to remember how incredible the entire postseason run was, and how unimaginable it was. So I'm happy. I'm happy for the team, happy for the future. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm ready for spring training already.
Yeah, it's like counting down the days. I think it's like 142 days or something like that. But you're right, man. I'm glad we gave it some time to breathe because I was pretty hot after we lost that game. I mean, not how you want to go out, losing, 3 straight to end the series at home, losing all 3 at home. There was hope too, and it just to get shut out like that 5-0 in the final game is a tough pill to swallow. But now that we're here disconnected from it, I can, appreciate the fact that we did get there. We are the National League champions, and there's a lot of talk about accelerating the timeline and money that's been generated and freed up from this postseason run to be able to reinvest that back into the payroll. Ken Kendrick was on with the local sports radio guys, and he was saying as much as basically all the money they generated revenue-wise goes right back into the team for their payroll, for paying Torey Lovello, the whole staff, everything. So I think there's a lot of reason to be optimistic, and we'll get into all that. Like Mike said, we're going to talk about Game 5 of the World Series, kind of the end of the season and the playoff run as a whole, the really big picture highs and lows of the season. Michael Benjamin will have a breakdown for us, and then what we saw throughout the season, just kind of reminiscent on just an incredible year where when you look back at our season preview, we were talking about let's just see if we can maybe make the playoffs, or let's see if we can go above 500, I think was like the minimum expectation. And they blew all those expectations out of the water. We did recaps every 2 weeks this baseball season for the Diamondbacks, and we did a player of the recap in each of those games. And so in that spirit, we'll do a player of the year. Each of us will share with you who we thought was deserving of that honor this year, and then kind of maybe go through our offseason wish list of who we want to see the Diamondbacks target in this upcoming postseason as they kind of shuffle their roster and get ready for 2024. But guys, I've been jabbering on, so I want to pass it back over to you. Michael Benjamin, you were not at Game 5 of the World Series like Tallman was, but you were watching at home, right? What was your first reaction to that?
First reaction, it was kind of a gut punch, man, because, I remember doing the recap for Game 4, basically talking about if we really wanted to have a chance to fight back, to get back to Arlington in order to force it to a Game 6, we needed the best stuff we had probably ever seen from this season from Zac Gallen. And if you look at it, he did, man. Through those 5 innings, what a stud. I mean, he had a no-hitter going into the 6th, right? He did finish with 6.1 innings pitched, gave up those 3 hits, as we know, in the earned run. It was just a myriad of mistakes from not being able to bring in guys who were runners in scoring position. I mean, you look at the stats, 0 for 9. We left 11 on base. And it wasn't even like, we were just getting guys over to second and had 2 outs. No, there were multiple occasions where we had guys on third with 1 out, and we found a way to fall flat. And that's just kind of demoralizing at the end of the day. And the last thing I'll probably remember from this World Series, which unfortunately is a negative note, is when that final hit was hit into center field and Alek Thomas missed that ball. Dude, that was one of those moments where I legitimately gasped And I almost had to hold back tears because that's the point when you know everything is basically gone at that point. And that was just tough for such an amazing ride to end that way, you know?
Yeah, Tallman, I mean, having been in the building as that game was going down, what was the energy like up until Paul Sewald gave up 4 earned runs in the late innings?
Well, let's say it wasn't it. I expected it to be a little higher energy. It was almost like the fans were just waiting for something to cheer for, right? Obviously, you had Gallen going out there pitching that, taking that no hitter through 6, but then it was like, okay, well, when's it going to happen? When are we going to, string together some hits, actually score a run? And I mean, I was screaming. I'm sure everyone around me was annoyed, but it almost felt like, hey, like, all right, like, give us something to cheer about. And it never really happened. We didn't have that explosive offensive play in game 5. And just comparing it, because I went to game 4 in the NLCS, that was a whole different, it was a different vibe in there. I mean, obviously you had a lot more Phillies fans than you did versus the Rangers fans in the World Series, but I don't know. I mean, it was like nothing I've ever felt before, but I expected more out of the crowd. And it was almost like the crowd expected more out of the team. I mean, it's understandable after having that game on Halloween where, what was it, after 2 innings, we were down 10-0. And I know watching that game 3, game 4, I'm like, oh man, like, are we in a slump? I mean, Mike, you put it perfectly. The offense just came out flat. There's nothing going on. And I was afraid that was going to carry into game 5. I don't know if other fans had the same thought as I did. Nonetheless, though, I was excited to go to the game. It was a great environment. They did good. It's incredible to see Chase Field like that, where every seat was packed. But, honestly, I felt like the energy would have been higher compared to what I saw in the NLCS.
Yeah, you would think so, right? Especially with your back up against the wall, your team needing to rally around something, get their last World Series game at home, their last game of the season at home. Like, you got to blow the roof off of that building. And I don't know. I do get that though. Like they needed something to root for. Like, you guys out there in the stands needed something to root for, and you just didn't have anything you could explode for and really like make a big spectacle of. So that's tough, man. And like I said, it's tough to go out like that when at the end of game 2, we had a glimmer of hope. And through 2 games, it looked like we were the better team. And then to just fall flat 3 games in a row. Tallman, you mentioned that Halloween game. That was just absolutely brutal. But I've talked about it a lot, and I know it's maybe obvious to say, but you need your offense and your defense to be going well at the same time. Your pitching and your hitting to be going good. And it seemed like the D-backs had it going, had a good rhythm up until that start of the World Series where things just kind of started to fall apart. And you could even argue in the Phillies series where we started to lose games and it wasn't all coming together there. Ultimately, they powered through. But kind of in that vein, wanting to look at the playoff run as a whole, Mike, like if we're sitting back now, like we said, we couldn't have done this a couple weeks ago. It might have been a little more emotional. We can really appreciate the fact that we swept the Brewers, swept the Dodgers, beat the Phillies in 7, and made the World Series with a very young roster. Like, man, that's just absolutely incredible. Did you ever think that this could happen?
I mean, you guys got to be a realist. There's absolutely no chance that anybody should have thought that this team would have made the World Series this year. We were positive about the trajectory that this team was on, the explosion and basically just absolute thrust upon the scene of Corbin Carroll, Zac Gallen being a guy who was basically in the Cy Young race the entire season up until probably the last third. So we were making the right moves for the future. But we also have to think, guys, like, we didn't get into the playoffs on our own accord. We had to get help from a lot of other teams out there. I know the big joke was if Suzuki for the Cubs actually makes that catch, we might not even go to the playoffs this season, right? We get swept our last series against Houston at home. We lose our last 4. We barely made into the dance, but that's what makes it even more special for what they were able to do at the beginning of this playoff run, because they had to go out and assert themselves on the road to start, and they did it in a just amazing fashion, man.
Yeah, I can't agree more. Like the games they won on the road really were the most impressive part of that. Going into hostile territory, being the underdog every single time you take the field, it's truly something incredible that for them to overcome that and even be in the position they were. I mean, everyone was so mad. They were blaming the playoff format. They were saying that it was, luck or a fluke or whatever excuse they could come up with to discredit the Diamondbacks just being good enough to be there. I mean, Tallman, what did you think of the playoff run? What was your favorite series out of it all?
Well, first glance, you really want to say your favorite one was when we swept the Dodgers, just because it's the Dodgers, right? But I mean, the clear number one answer to that is the Phillies series. It was entertaining. I mean, that's what you expect out of October baseball, and we gave the fans just that. But anytime a series goes to 7, it's always like game 7s are exciting, but you never want your team to be involved in a game 7 because all the marbles are on the table. But nonetheless, obviously the D-backs came out on top, and it was an incredible series. So by far, the Phillies was the most entertaining. I feel like the Phillies were the best baseball team. The Diamondbacks had to get through in the postseason. I thought the Phillies were a better team than the Rangers. I mean, I know I said it a couple of times that the Rangers or the D-backs stacked up better against the Rangers. I thought it was a better matchup, more favorable to the Diamondbacks, but it just seemed like the Phillies were destined to just run through the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks were going to be a little speed bump in the parking lot on their way to the World Series, but that was not the case. So very, very entertaining baseball that the D-backs put on against those Phillies.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The Phillies series was just absolutely incredible. I was talking trash back and forth with a few people on social media who, of course, like I said, I was just saying, discredited the Diamondbacks for even making it to where they were in the NLCS, let alone actually beating the Phillies and going to the World Series. And I'm sure they feel like they might have had the last laugh because we didn't win the World Series, but they didn't even make it to the World Series as Phillies fans. So that's neither here nor there. But yeah, man, I think I can really not emphasize enough that I'm just happy that they got to where they did, and it gives me optimism for the future with such a young group of guys if they continue to progress, and if there is some more money there to be able to invest in chasing some free agents. And I want to get into that a little bit later. But Mike, I think you were saying you had a little bit of a breakdown of the whole season.
Yes, sir. I mean, it's really high level. You have to remember this is 162 games. So if I'm trying to tell you, hey, do you remember that May 28th matchup against the Tampa Bay Rays? Hell no, we don't know it, right? So, we just think about where we started, like Chris was saying before, in the expectations, maybe just a couple of games over 500, having some early success to start the season. And that's exactly what this team did, man. But like we said, when we first started this first month in April, we went 16-13, just trying to kind of find the mold. And then we really just hit the ground running after that. Between May 12th and May 23rd, we went 9-2. And by July 1st, we were 50-34, 16 games above 500. If you would have told me that was going to happen at any point, I would have told you that you were crazy, man. And this team led the NL West for a good chunk, about a month and a half as well. But then July happened, and we know it was a struggle of a month. We went 8-16, went down to only 7 games above 500. And then we start August 0-9 and find ourselves 2 games below 500. And at that point, we were really just treading water after that, man, right? I mean, we had some nice series wins to get ourselves kind of out of the mud with 3 out of 4 against San Diego and Cincinnati, who at that point were both kind of contenders for a wild card. So that's where we needed to get those series wins right there. But then our kryptonite, we get swept by the Dodgers to end August. But in the middle of September, after we took 3 out of 4 against the Cubs, like it felt like we were there, right? Then we swept the Giants in a 2-game series. And we're looking at the rest of the schedule and we're talking, oh, okay, we got the Yankees coming up. We have Colorado again, the White Sox, all these teams who really aren't in contention to make a playoff push. And then we lose 3 out of 4 against the New York Mets. The highest payroll in baseball finally comes to fruition for them after they haven't been in it forever, man. And then, like we said, we lose the series to the Yankees. At that point, we were wondering, man, is this team going to be able to get in? And the last thing, like I said, we did lose the last 4 of the season, but got some help from other teams to finally get us in there. And man, what a beautiful, beautiful first series, I will say it was against the Milwaukee Brewers to finally get a first playoff series win since 2011? And the first time that we were in the playoffs since 2017, man, it seemed like a very, very long time ago. But that's your high-level view. And like Chris said, we got recaps. If you want to go and reminisce some more, go ahead and check those out too.
Yeah, man, the recaps were fun. It's always a roller coaster, especially when you're looking at a 2-week window, because you'll see if you were following along or if you go and look back, it's like 1 2-week section is like, man, this team is crazy. They're doing so good. They're riding high. They're getting on base. 2 weeks later, wow, we are losing every game. The bats are cold. The bats need to wake up. The bullpen sucks. And then you get to the next week and it's like the bats are really good, but the bullpen sucks. And so the season ebbs and flows, but I really like the way that they kind of just held down packed and stuck to their guns. There weren't really any dramatic changes. We kind of thought there might be at the trade deadline. We were hoping to get a starting pitcher. I believe Mike Hazen has come out and said he tried to get a starting pitcher, just didn't come to fruition. And man, maybe that could have been the difference maker in the World Series if we had a 4th pitcher we could go to. I mean, I'm not saying Brandon Pfaadt did a bad job. He did absolutely the opposite. He did an incredible job in the postseason, what he was asked to do. And what's crazy is, again, talking about the recaps, there was a time in the season when we all agreed that Brandon Pfaadt should go down to AAA and stay in AAA, and that we didn't want to see him for the rest of the season, because when he had come up to the MLB for his 2-3 starts that he had to start his career, they were so bad, guys. Like, I'm pretty sure it was almost like a 10 ERA. It was so bad. Like, it was ugly. But that kid bounced back, and hopefully he continues that progression. I hope it's not just a flash in the pan, and we can see some more Brandon Pfaadt going forward. But talking, 2023 season, man, there's a lot of positives and things to be optimistic about. It's hard not to stress that. Corbin Carroll was an all-star. Geraldo Perdomo, Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and Zac Gallen. Guys, the Diamondbacks had 4 all-stars in the all-star game. I know Perdomo was kind of a late addition, I think, because of an injury that another player, so like a reserve or substitute. So I guess you could say 3 true all-stars and then a 4th supplementary. But either way, that's freaking awesome. We're starting to get the recognition. Our team's on the map now. And man, I'm just excited for next season. But Tallman, looking back on the 2024 season, what was your favorite part of the ride that we all went on?
Well, you can call it a ride for sure. It's definitely a roller coaster, and made you a little sick at the end, right? Favorite part, I mean, it's got to be just the rise of Corbin Carroll. I mean, you saw this kid just, I mean, someone said it earlier, I think it was Mike, he just took the league by storm, and really is showing that, he's a true all-star. He should be an MVP candidate every single season going forward. But just seeing him come in and being able to showcase him. I mean, you mentioned the All-Star game. I mean, part of that All-Star game, it was in his hometown. He was mic'd up. People got to learn a little bit about him. And for him to join, or what was it? What was the club he joined as a rookie? I don't know. He had a bunch of home runs, had a bunch of stolen bases. And then being able to showcase him in the postseason as well. And it's just so great to be able to sit here and say, yeah, that dude they're talking about on ESPN, he's on our baseball team. And then you got to remember the contract that he signed before the season, just absolute steal, and how that contract plays out over the next 7 seasons. I mean, that's going to be one of the best signings, I think, in the last 20 years of baseball. But seeing him come in and, like I said, take the league by storm, also having our starting pitcher be the starting pitcher for the All-Star game, that was incredible. And I don't know, just really seeing us pull it off. Cause I mean, I was with you guys. I mean, I guess I'm usually pretty negative, but I didn't even think we were going to win a single playoff game against the Brewers. But to see him come out, and remember those 2 Brewers games, we went down 3-4-0 and to start both those games. And I remember the first one, I'm like, oh, well, hey, at least we made it. At least we can say, we were a wild card team in 2023. But yeah, it was a fun season, and man, I'm a little sad it's over.
Yeah, I'm having withdrawals, man. I've been thinking about baseball a lot, and seeing a lot of posts are, counting down the days until spring training, and we're really excited for next season. But I know we're going to have to move on. We're going to have to continue to talk about the Cardinals and the Phoenix Suns, especially. Mike and I are going to be getting into some Suns recaps and past the outlet streams, talking plenty about the Suns and everything going on there. Because I don't know about Mike, but I certainly have some feelings about how their season has started. But this is our 2023 Arizona Diamondbacks season review. So, Mike, we're talking about the All-Stars and everything, and Zac Gallen being the All-Star starting pitcher for the NL. He's right now a finalist for the Cy Young of the NL. It's Zac Gallen, of course, Blake Snell, and Logan Webb. And I just want to ask you, because I think it's interesting. I think it's probably right now between Blake Snell and Zac Gallen. But just these stats here: Blake Snell, 14-9 with an ERA of 2.25, 234 strikeouts. Logan Webb, 9-11 record, ERA of 3.25, 194 strikeouts. And then Zac Gallen, 17-8 with an ERA of 3.47 and 220 strikeouts. So Gallen has the best record. Strider has the best ERA and the most strikeouts. But what I think is very interesting, and I don't want to get too off topic and talking about the MLB more broadly, but Logan Webb being in there is confusing to me when you consider other pitchers like Spencer Strider, who his overall record was 19-5, ERA of 3.86 with 281 strikeouts. So more wins and more strikeouts than any NL Cy Young finalist. A lot of people mentioned Justin Steele, again, with a better record than two other finalists at 16-5, an ERA of 3.06 and 176 strikeouts. So all that to say, and kind of long-winded here, is I don't know if Zac Gallen has a chance to win it just based off maybe how much they're weighting the wins category, because Zac Gallen does have the most wins, but Strider had more. ERA is pretty similar. Snell has an ERA 2.25. That's pretty incredible, and more strikeouts, but Strider had almost 50 more strikeouts than him. So I don't know. I just think I want to ask you, Mike, what do you think of Zac Gallen's chances to win the Cy Young, and any other thoughts you might have had at the Diamondbacks season?
I guess there's also a question about recency bias. I mean, Zac Gallen is the only pitcher out of that group that actually is playing in technically November. I mean, he pitched in a November baseball game, but I think he still has a chance. I just think he did go a little bit too middling to end the season, right? I mean, guys, we remember he was stuck on 11 wins or 10 wins for seemed like 2 months, and he ends up finishing 4-4 to go out the season. Did have a tough postseason too, guys. I mean, 2-4, 4.54 ERA as well. When we needed him to come out and get it done in that last game, he did, and he got let down. But you know what's funny? He was the one who was letting down the team, in Philadelphia and that first game in Texas, unfortunately, as well. Actually, no, I take that back. We were winning. Paul Sewald let us down in the first game. So we'll take back that asterisk for that one. But I mean, I think he still has a pretty good chance. Like we said, what's his numbers here? 9.4 Ks per 9. Does, have a nice record with those 17 wins and only 9 losses. But I think there was just too much that was left on the table to finish off the season for Zac Gallen to be able to get over that hump for the Cy Young, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it's probably going to be Blake Snell for my money. Tallman, I think it'd be a good time to kind of reflect on a lot of the transactions we saw throughout this season. I know you had some strong reactions to the signing of Jace Peterson. I know he wasn't quite your favorite. Zach Davies wasn't always your favorite guy to be on the roster. He got DFA'd late. We saw Mad Bum get cut early, and then later in the playoffs offered to pitch for the Rangers in their Game 7 against the Astros. Don't know if you guys heard about that one. Carson Kelly, once a top prospect for the Diamondbacks organization, DFA'd, said GTFO, get out of here, Carson Kelly. Tommy Pham coming in might have been one of my favorite signings. Initially, he I don't know, it seemed like all the guys we brought in, him and Sewald, they both kind of stumbled out the gate, but found a rhythm, got comfortable, and were there when we needed them most. Those two guys were great through the postseason. But Tallman, I'm sorry, I kind of talked too much there, but what was your favorite roster move of the season, or what were some of the roster moves you really, thought were good moves?
Yeah, my favorite one, it's got to be get rid of Carson Kelly. I mean, when he came back from injury, him sharing time with Gabby behind the plate, it was not working. Kelly was bringing the team down. It was very obvious. And also on the other hand, you have Moreno, who's just a star, and he really showed it this year. So getting Kelly out of the way, making Gabby the clear-cut number one catcher, and might be what he got his first Gold Glove this year. He's going to be one of the best catchers in baseball in the next couple of years here. So getting him out of the way, letting Gabby take the reins. I mean, that was just so clear because Moreno was a big, big part of this team, especially down the stretch of the season and into the postseason. Getting rid of Mad Bum. I mean, obviously we talked a bunch about that at the beginning of the season. I mean, that guy's out there throwing meatballs. I mean, this team was trying to be competitive. I think we didn't have a crazy record when we got rid of him, but every time he went out there, it was just unbelievable. So getting rid of him quick, and even though you owed him a bunch of money, I think we're on the hook for, I think it's $20 million or something next year. But that was just the front office saying, hey, we don't care. We're here to win baseball games. And if you're not producing for us, you're going to get shown the door. And using that as a tangent into Zach Davies, that was the same thing. Zach Davies was productive. He was decent, but then he got to a point in the season where every 5 days you put him out there, he was just a liability. I mean, he had a couple starts where we still won the game, but he lasted 3 innings and gave up 6 earned runs. So it got to the point where, hey, this team's too good. We're trying to do something right now, and we can't afford to send somebody out to the mound. That's just going to be a liability. I mean, we went into the postseason with 3 starting pitchers. We'd rather have a bullpen game than put Zach Davies on the mound. But then talk about the signings, or excuse me, the moves at the deadline. Tommy Pham, I mean, that guy, he's just a leader. He came in, he was a clubhouse favorite. He was productive in key moments. Yeah, you go look at his stats, they're not going to jump off at the page at you and scream, all-star. But he had clutch hits. He was a leader in that clubhouse when, we have a lot of young guys in there. So he was an incredible trade. I remember when that happened, I was like, oh, well, I mean, I mentioned in what Chris and we did the last in-person heat check.
Yeah.
And you compared what the Rangers did at the deadline versus what the Diamondbacks did. We traded for Tommy Pham and we traded for Jace Peterson. The Rangers are out here getting Max Scherzer and who else they trade for? They got Aroldis Chapman earlier in the season. So, but Pham turned out to be an incredible addition to the team. Sewald, obviously shaky start, but he really tightened it down in the postseason. And he was part of that 3-head monster in the bullpen of Ryan Thompson, who I'm going to have to talk about next, the Gink, and then Sewald. I mean, that your 7th, 8th inning, 9th inning reliever pitchers were just so solid throughout the postseason, and they were a big reason for this team's success. But yeah, I mean, where'd they find Ryan Thompson? I mean, would he get dropped by the Rays? Is that what it was? And he got picked up. I mean, that was an incredible pickup. I mean, you find that guy who's getting dropped by teams in the third half of the season, and you bring him in, he's going to pitch some huge innings for you on a tremendous postseason run. I mean, Ryan Thompson, he really showed up, and he was a hell of a pitcher. So that right there, Ryan Thompson's got to be pretty close to the top here. But getting Kelly out of the way, Gabby is a superstar. He's going to be a fan favorite for a long time.
But Tallman, I got to jump on this too, because man, those are a lot of names that you just float out. But with a 162 game season, I think we forget about how many guys are really here throughout a season. I mean, a guy we didn't see throughout the playoffs, Scott McGough, whatever.
McGough.
63 games with us. Another guy, Austin Adams, who had a nice showing with us, 24 games when he went down with the injury as well. And then a guy who made an impact down the stretch in our playoff run as well, Andrew Salfrank, got the call up late, only 10 games during the regular season with us. And guys, we have to remember that at one point, Andrew Chafin was our leader in saves, right? 8 saves with a 4.19 ERA. I just love what Paul Sewald was able to do to come in and really shut down the door, had an incredible start to the postseason, which was a perfect 6 for 6 until the unfortunate game 1 blown save. That's just always a tough scenario when you see that happening too. But I mean, I got to talk about the starting pitcher position as well. Tallman, I'm surprised you didn't go with this one as your favorite DFA, I guess you could say, of the year. But for me, dude, it's Madison Bumgarner. They started off this year basically saying exactly what you said. If you weren't ready to make a commitment to this team and be productive, you weren't going to last. Man, he only got 4 starts. He was 0 for 3, had a 10.26 ERA, didn't even make it through April. He was released on the 26th after giving up 7 runs, 4 walks on 7 hits in just 3 innings against the St. Louis Cardinals, who we know were dumpster fire for themselves this season. But, I'm very surprised you didn't go with him, man.
Yeah, well, that felt like a whole nother season ago. Didn't that feel like so long
It
ago
does,
when they got rid of Madison? Like, it was like,
I mean, April
oh
to
yeah, I
November.
forgot. Yeah, I was like, wow, okay. I mean, so much has happened, and we've been through so much different crap throughout this season with this team. Whereas, like, that felt like a distant memory. But I know we were very happy when that happened. But I don't know. I couldn't pick that because Gabriel Moreno he's just such a special kid. So I had to go with that.
I mean, what a postseason he had, right? You talk about for the regular season, had 7 home runs. He had 4 alone in this playoff run. Tied with another guy, another up-and-comer, Alec Thomas, man. Our outfield, we're going to have to do some maneuvering. It sounds like we'll see if Lourdes Gurriel is going to be a part of this team next year. But the last thing I want to talk about, too, is just going into a postseason with only 3 starters. We're going to talk about our wish list for next year, and that's going to be one of the number 1 priorities on my list. I mean, what a loss it was to have Tommy Henry go down, at the end of July when he was put on the 30-day with that elbow and then got shifted to the 60-day DL on August 16th. I mean, 16 starts, 5-4 record, 4.15 ERA, about 6.5 Ks per 9. I thought he was getting better as this season went on. And then when he went down, it was just like poof, he disappeared. And we were just scrambling after that because that was still before Brandon Pfaadt was really starting to find his own as well. But man, like I said, lots of different faces within a season. And that's why it's awesome that we're able to come back and reminisce on all of these guys, even if they're guys that we're happy to see not be around anymore, right?
Yeah, it's like one of those situations where some of those guys are addition by subtraction, getting rid of Chafin, getting rid of Mad Bum. You got to give these guys like Pfaadt and Sal Frank a chance, and it paid off. It shows that Hazen is absolutely deserving of the position he's in to be able to assemble the way he has. And the way Torey Lovello managed through the postseason, everyone was saying it, pulling all the right levers, making all the right moves at all the right times until his players just weren't getting the results for him. And that's not his fault. I still think, for the most part, I think I liked about 95% of Torey's decisions he made throughout the postseason. If I'm being honest. But Mike, you're talking about the guys that have come and gone throughout the season. We also got to see a taste of Jordan Lawler. I can't remember if you mentioned him or not, but man, that kid, we're going to have to decide are we going to keep him as a top prospect and hope that he grows into his potential, or do we keep a guy like Geraldo Perdomo, who we kind of I think he might be at his best right now, or he could get better. Like, really nobody knows. So we have some options here. What do we do going forward? I think that just kind of ties into talking about the offseason a little bit. But I like that this organization is no nonsense and win oriented, even when the expectations are not so high. I mean, like we said, expectation was go above 500, maybe challenge for a wild card, get a postseason spot, because winning the division wasn't ever an option for us starting the season. It was definitely going to be via the wild card if we were going to make the postseason. And so mission accomplished on both fronts. And then anything after that was just icing on the cake. And so you have to remember that. You have to really take a step back. And I know we talk about expectations change and goals shift as you move throughout a season, but at the end of the day, what this team accomplished, even if they lost in the NLCS. Even if they lost against the Dodgers, if they put up a fight, I think we still would have been proud of them. And the fact that they made it to the World Series is even just that much sweeter. But guys, before I get too much ahead of myself talking about next year, I want to talk about this year and close it out with our player of the year. And so, Cody, I will pass it to you first. Who is your player of the year?
All right. Sorry, I was thrown off by you calling me the C word. All right, player player of the year.
I forget your name sometimes. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, I know. It's all right. My player of the year, and really, it's just, I mean, you could have picked 6, 7, 8 different dudes, I feel like. But I got to go with the Gink, Kevin Ginkel. I mean, the guy finishes the regular season with 9 wins, 1 loss. He goes a 2.48 ERA through 65 innings, 70 Ks and 23 walks. But the postseason, the dude didn't give up a run. I mean, he had 1 win in the postseason with 11 2/3 innings pitched, 15 Ks, 5 walks, and guy was just electric. I mean, he was shut down, or just no one could hit him. He was, I don't know. I mean, you could argue in that Phillies series, he was either number 2 or number 3 on that list of who's going to win NLCS MVP. Obviously, Ketel Marte was most deserving of that, but you can't just glance over what Kevin Ginkel did in that setup position, pitching in the 8th inning. The guy is just electric, and you got to remember, this was a guy that got sent down to the minors in June, and then he comes out and he literally was a good portion of the talk of this D-backs baseball team through the postseason. I mean, everyone was talking about him, and just him shutting down some of those big names on that Phillies lineup. And dude, he really, that guy's slider was just absolutely nasty. No one could hit it, but what he did coming back from, kind of a lackluster start to the season, getting sent down, bouncing back, coming up and being a huge, huge part of that bullpen, or of the transformation of that bullpen. That bullpen was the absolute worst the first 2-3 months of the season. And now you could, going through this whole postseason run, the last month of the season, you could argue that was one of our biggest strengths as a team. And Kevin Ginkel is right in the middle of it. He was ahead. So he's got to be my player of the year. And man, I mean, like I said, I wanted to pick Ketel Marte, but I couldn't pass up the Gink.
Yeah, you gotta love the Gink. He was solid all throughout the year, and kind of the only guy in our bullpen for a long time who was able to be relied upon. I agree with you about Ketel Marte. I mean, everyone knows he's my man. We share a birthday down to the year and the date. Love my boy Ketel. Cornerstone of this franchise. I mean, it was incredible what he did through the postseason, especially setting that record. What was it, 20 games with a hit streak? And how fitting that streak came to an end in that loss in game 5. But man, I would have to say for myself, my player of the year is Christian Walker. I know he didn't have a great postseason. We wanted more out of him once the playoffs started, and especially could have used him in the World Series. But in the regular season, he was the reason that we got to the playoffs and to where we were. I mean, not the only reason, but a big part of it. You look at his stats, he had 33 home runs, which was a team leading 33 home runs. He led the team in RBIs with 103, and he had the most doubles with 36 doubles, 86 runs, which was 3rd on the team. But man, his bat was electric all year long for the most part. There were a couple weeks here and there where he kind of slumped a little bit, and like I mentioned, in the postseason. But Christian Walker is an absolute stud. Another Gold Glove for him, 2 years in a row. Someone that we didn't see coming at all. I mean, after Paul Goldschmidt left, there was a huge void to fill, and I think he's done it, guys. Like, I think he's filled Paul Goldschmidt's shoes, which is crazy to say, honestly. But yeah, that's why Christian Walker is my player of the year. Mike, who you got?
I got to say the same thing as Tallman, man. This one was really tough because there were just some guys this year who had stellar years. We already know this. I mean, you talk about the all-star Lourdes Gurriel, right? 24 homers, 82 RBIs. I have to shout out, even though you guys have already said his name twice, we got to triple down Ketel Marte. I wouldn't be surprised if his playoff performance was because of the all-star snub. That was absolutely caused on Ketel's front. He should have made the All-Star game, but 25 home runs and 82 RBIs as well. But we all know who it is. We saved the best for last. My player of the year, and probably everybody's player of the year, even though you guys picked other guys, it's Corbin Carroll. Second on the team in games played this year at 153. He led the team in average with .285. He led the team in OPS at .868. Led the team with 161 hits. He had 30 doubles, 10 triples. You can probably say that more than half of those were just stretched out from his sheer hustle, right? He was tied for second on the team with 25 home runs with Ketel, and he had 54 stolen bases. And this was going back to what Tallman was saying. Corbin Carroll stands alone. He is the first rookie in MLB history with 25 home runs and at least 50 stolen bases. This kid just jumped onto the map, and I can't wait to see where he goes from here. His speed is so electric. He's very witty when it comes to, controlling the base paths, understanding when to attack. He has great speed in the outfield as well. We saw plenty of web gems from him this year. And he's sneaky with the bat, man. He knows when to pick his spots, and he has some good power for a guy who's a little bit smaller. So Corbin Carroll, this one might have been the easiest of all of the easy recap picks that I probably said this season. When it comes down to player of the year, it's Corbin Carroll.
And I have to jump in on this parade, Mike, because you're absolutely right. Corbin Carroll is the Diamondbacks player of the year. I think, honestly, like everything you guys have been saying, whether it's the steal of a contract he's on, the way he performed throughout his rookie season. Guys, his rookie season, you can talk about the World Series where we're up against veterans like Corey Seager, who is a World Series MVP, now a two-time World Series MVP, one in each division. Only other player to do that is Reggie Jackson. And Corbin Carroll's a rookie, man. So he could be, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but I'm just thinking he could be our Mike Trout. He could be our Pete Alonso. He could be the guy that is the cornerstone of our franchise that keeps us competitive year in and year out, despite other guys that might come and go throughout that. And right now, we're in a window where I think with as young as our roster is and as cheap as a lot of them are, they have room to build on top of that. And I do want to talk about that. And so this offseason, there are some big names out there. There's some big needs. Tallman, you were just saying right before we launched here that it sounds like Lourdes Gurriel Jr. will not be on this roster next year. He posted on his Instagram, I believe, kind of thanking the Diamondbacks fans and the organization. I don't think anything has been announced officially that he's signing with anyone else or not signing with us. But Mike, are you comfortable with Gurriel leaving the Diamondbacks after this year?
It's tough. When we think back to the trade, which brought him and Gabriel Moreno in, I think the centerpiece was more so around Gabriel, and to get Lourdes and to get the production that we got from him this year was absolutely great. It's another right-handed bat that we need in the lineup. So if we can find out ways to mask that, I think we're going to be okay. I think the front office still wants to see what Jake McCarthy can do, and maybe they kind of flip some places around, maybe put Jake in right field, switch Corbin back over to left. I think Alek Thomas has really just kind of solidified himself in the center field, and obviously Corbin Carroll is who he is. So those guys are going to be your everyday outfielders next year. So we'll see, do we bring back Tommy Pham as well? He's going to be 36 years old, and kind of, I don't know if I want him in the outfield playing defense, like having him at DH worked for the postseason. He had some incredible games, including that 4-hit game as well, but it'll be tough to see him go, man, because we were just getting to know him and love him really at the end of the day.
Yeah, and you saw all the merch, the purple hair that people were wearing, his signature. It was a fun ride for sure. But Tallman, even you said like you wouldn't be upset if Gurriel wasn't on this roster next year, and I don't think that's a unpopular sentiment. I want you to talk about that, of course, but I also want to ask you what you think of potentially bringing in the hometown guy, Cody Bellinger, to this outfield.
Yeah, I mean, to start with Gurriel, I mean, it's not a negative thing. I'm not over here like, oh my God, he's not the guy, get rid of him. It was more so, I mean, you got a lot of production out of him, right? And how old's the guy? I totally meant to look this up. He's 30 years old. So you got to think about what does he want versus what the team wants to give him. I mean, you could see the season that he put on. I mean, some team's going to come up, and I bet you they're going to throw some money at him. And the D-backs we're built around a young core. So, reason by saying, hey, I wouldn't be sad if he wasn't here next year, because he'd probably be too expensive for what we're trying to do. And I know that's not what any of us want to hear. We don't want to hear, oh my God, they're not spending money again. We don't want to be the 24th overall payroll in the league again. But, we got to be realistic, right? Or do you want to sit here and pay give Lourdes a 4-year, however many millions on a contract? No, probably not. Right. But so I wouldn't be sad if he was gone. It looks like he's not going to be back, but Mike, you made a good point. I mean, you got a lot of left-handed bats in that lineup right now, and you got to find a dude that's a right-hander that you can stick in left field. So I bet you they find a veteran guy, probably somebody similar to what Lourdes was when he came in, a guy that we're not going to be too familiar with, but who's got some experience. And hey, maybe he'll have a similar season for the D-backs next year. But talking about Bellinger, he went to Chandler High? Is that where he
I think
went?
so. Yeah.
Yeah, he went to Chandler High. So Bellinger, he really had he really revitalized his career this year. I think he won Rookie of the Year, if I'm not mistaken, when he came into the league. But he kind of his career kind of bottomed out, right? He came out real hot and he just cooled off like crazy. But going to play for the Cubs this season, I mean, the guy shows just kind of the sheer power that he has, and he really, like I said, revitalized his career. And I'm not surprised that he opted to test free agency to see what he can get. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it, but that's another guy. He's not going to be cheap. I mean, he is a borderline all-star player, and if he can do what he did this year with the Cubs, with the D-backs next year, then yeah, it'd be worth it. I mean, I'd take Bellinger over Gurriel any day of the week, obviously, but he's going to cost money, and I'm not going to sit here and sound stupid when I say, oh, this team's going to spend, because we're not going to spend. I mean, that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair. And I double checked. Cody Bellinger went to Hamilton High School, same alma mater as
I always
Terrell
mix
Suggs.
that up.
Yeah,
Just
It's
lump them together. Chandler and Hamilton,
Yeah,
same.
They're like 5 miles away from each other.
Yeah, he went to Hamilton.
if that.
There you go.
Chandlerton. Yeah, it works. Yeah, either way, those teams seem to be producing talent left and right. But yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, I think Bellinger, the way he's kind of like you said, revitalized his career a little bit. Definitely not getting back into the form that he was in when he was absolutely raking with the Dodgers, but showing that he can be a productive part of a lineup again. And if he was born and raised here, I don't know if that makes him a Diamondbacks fan or where his allegiances lie. I imagine maybe that changes when you become a player, but it would be cool to maybe come back home for him and play for the Diamondbacks. Maybe that would also help him be comfortable and produce. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But some other guys I'm thinking about is the third base position. We've bitched about it so much. We had Emmanuel Rivera and Jace Peterson and different guys kind of revolving through there. Josh Rojas, who was traded off of the team. I think that's just a position we really need to address this offseason. And an intriguing name for me was Matt Chapman. He was most recently on the Toronto Blue Jays, I believe. And Tallman, were you saying he was a Golden Glove winner?
Yeah, I thought he won Gold Glove this year. Sorry, I should have verified that before I
putting you on the spot real quick. Yeah,
yeah.
No big deal. But it looks like the Blue Jays have extended a qualifying offer to him. It looks like he did win a Gold Glove there at third base. So that would be a great addition, but maybe he'll go back to the Blue Jays depending on how he weighs his options. Mike, do you think third base, though, is a priority, or is there another position you have your eye on for this team to focus?
100% has to be a priority. We need to add another bat just in case Christian Walker can't step up to the plate in the postseason. And it doesn't hurt to have another guy who might be able to get you 30 home runs. I mean, like Chris, I think you were talking about Matt Chapman. I don't hate it. A guy who's going to have to get paid a lot of money. So like Tallman said, who knows if he'd be able to even find his way over here. Here's a blast from the past. Would you guys want Eduardo Escobar back? He's going to be 35 years old. That's a no for me. Another guy.
Yeah, that's a no.
I also like player flexibility. Isaiah Kinner-Falafel from the New York Yankees. Going to be 29 years old probably by the time that spring training comes along next year. Nothing crazy, but I don't mind that we're going younger. I did love what Evan Longoria was able to do this year with the veteran presence. Be, a guy who's willing to listen for any of these kids, show them the ropes. But you can't go into the season thinking that it's going to be another split time frame like they were thinking it was going to be between him and Josh Rojas. And we saw what happened. Josh struggled to start the season, got demoted, and then traded. So I think you want to bring in somebody who's a little bit more tenured, has a little bit more pop in the bat, and somebody who you don't have to mask defensively down there as well. So we'll see. Other than that, like a lot of people have been saying, starting pitching, you got to make sure you bring in another starter at least. And then relief pitching, start cleaning up some of these positions for guys who you can't trust. Unfortunately, I think some of those names right now that come to mind are Miguel Castro, maybe Luis Frias. You just have to think about the guys that were getting opportunities in the playoffs, because those are the guys that you need to be shored up with when it comes down to it, if we are to make another playoff push next season.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I tend to lean more towards the optimistic, which is uncharacteristic for me. I think, guys, usually I feel like I'm on here being the pessimist when it comes to talking about all these teams. But, I mean, Tallman, you probably heard the stories this week coming out about the Padres having to take out loans to cover their payroll this season. They were really banking on making the playoffs and being able to pay their debts off a playoff and World Series push, and then to come up so short. It blows my mind what the Diamondbacks were able to accomplish when you look at the paper, like it's paper side by side, these rosters. You got big names on this Padres team, and they were not able to compete. So we're seeing stars in the making on this Diamondbacks team. At least that's how it seems. Can they replicate that next season? Like I said, I'm super optimistic, and I think it's very possible. We're just a few pieces away from being a team that you really don't want to fuck with. And I think that we showed a lot of people that through this postseason run, and a lot of people are just going to call it a fluke because the small market teams never get the credit for just being better than you. Like we're just better than you. Was that the TJ or the JJ Watt line?
Forget that, JJ Watt. Maybe we're just fucking better.
Maybe we're just fucking better. And I think that's this Diamondbacks team needs to embrace the fact that they are the underdog, that they are always going to be discredited at every turn. And I think them and the Diamondbacks fans are going to embrace the chaos, to kind of throw in one of their new taglines there. But it's just so true. And I'm super excited. But Tallman, I want to kick it to you, I guess, to share any last thoughts you have and feelings towards this season that just ended with us as National League pennant winners, or the upcoming 2024 season.
Well, yeah. First thing, I've been thinking about this lately. Do you guys think we can figure out if Jordan Lawler can play third base?
Dude, honestly, I wouldn't mind.
Come on.
Give it a chance. Why not? Right?
I mean, shit. Because if you think, because you already mentioned it earlier, Chris, you're like, do you keep Perdomo? Do you roll with Lawler? Do you flip Perdomo forward third base prospect or somebody? And I think Lawler's too high of he's too high of a prospect. He's one of the highest rated prospects in the minor leagues right now. You can't get off of him. You can't trade him, even though Perdomo's he's shown glimpses of being really good and being very productive when he's batting ninth in the lineup. But Lawler's going to be your dude for the future. I mean, you have to, because you're going to go that route like you did with Corbin Carroll, where you're going to throw out the net and see, hey, here's an 8-year however many million contracts similar to Carroll's, and you're going to hope that you struck gold just like you did with Carroll, because unfortunately that's how this team's going to have to function. I mean, we mentioned it a lot in the preview coming into the series, or excuse me, the season, where we're talking about how these small market teams are going to have to function. The Diamondbacks, I think our days of throwing 200, 300 million, or excuse me, our days. I don't think the day is going to come where this team throws 200, 250 million at one player. It's not going to happen. And then, I mean, yeah, I'd like to go back and remember what we paid Greinke, and we even threw some cash at Madison Bumgarner, and we're still paying him too. So I don't know. I mean, we're going to see a lot of this. Hey, we're going to find these young guys, we're going to develop them, and we're going to try to secure them and lock them, and we're going to try to keep them in like a crazy ex-girlfriend, and they can't leave. I mean, think back to what they did with Paul Goldschmidt. Remember the contract they gave Paul Goldschmidt? It was 5 years, $32 million. I mean, that's incredible. Goldschmidt outplayed the crap out of that contract, just like Corbin Carroll almost outplayed his contract in one season, his rookie season. But obviously, we need a third baseman. That's the one clear position we got zero production out of. I don't want to see Peterson there. I mean, Rivera's has lost his mustache when he's at third base and at the plate. And then Longoria, I mean, the dude's got some heart. He played some baseball this year for sure. But I mean, the wheels are about to fall off. You got to find somebody that you can stick in there and develop over time who's going to be there for a while. Starting pitching is the clearest one, guys. I mean, we just watched the postseason where we only had 3 starting pitchers. I think next year we're going to see, obviously, our 2 guys, Gallen and Kelly. You're going to hope that they can pull in some type of veteran starter that can fill your third spot. Then you have Fott at 4, and then we're probably going to see either a mixture of Tommy or Ryan Nelson in that 5th spot. I mean, those are some young pitchers that showed some promise this year. I mean, just like Fott. I mean, remember Fott got sent down to the minors, 2-3 times? I mean, that dude overcame adversity for sure this season. And we saw some good stuff out of Tommy Henry and Ryan Nelson. So we're going to see those young guys get some more chances, because you can't give up on them yet. But that veteran starting pitcher, we need somebody in here that's pitched some good baseball before to kind of help solidify that starting rotation.
I don't know if I could have said it any better. I mean, my final thoughts is you have the foundation, right? But I do want to go back a little bit. I think I was talking to Chris, and I've talked to a couple of different people as well who are Arizona sports fans. And the main narrative right off the bat when we lost was, well, at least we made it there, right? Nobody ever thought we could have done this. Here's the truth when it comes down to Arizona sports, guys. We're chomping at the bit for a damn championship. It is difficult to stomach when a team loses the way that they did in the World Series. That's kind of why we had to take a couple of days off before we really rallied back and talked about this team, because those last 2 games were really, really tough to just get through, man. And at the same time, right, we do have to be appreciative and thankful for what this team was able to do this season through the roller coasters with such an incredible start, leading the NL West, having an abysmal summer, to somehow finally figuring it out once again and climbing to a playoff berth and making it to the damn World Series. So at the end of the day, yes, everything was a success. It's an absolute positive, everything this team did this season. There's nowhere else they can probably go from here other than to win a World Series, but they put themselves in a place to be successful over the next couple of years. And that's what gets me so exciting, to continue to grow my love for baseball a little bit more than where it was, right? Because, man, I'm almost like Tallman, man. I'm counting down the days for spring training at this point. All right, Chris, what do you got, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys have really said it all. There's nothing that I feel like we haven't talked about, but I could go on and on. just talking about how incredible this ride was this season. Corbin Carroll, a rookie. Jordan Lawler, going to be a rookie next year potentially. Brandon Pfaadt, just such a young core to have so much room for optimism. I mean, you're absolutely right, Mike. This Valley does want a championship, and we've seen that when sports teams in the Valley are successful, that people will rally around them. They might have their other allegiances, they might be transplants, they might root for other teams, but when the hometown team is doing well, they show out. And so for better or worse, we're in a time period where we might start to see Diamondbacks games more full of D-backs fans during the regular season than we have in years past. And if we can continue to build on that, that's how you start getting a fan base that will be loyal, because guys, these times they are a changing. We were all three born here. There's so many kids being born here every day. And I believe that they will become Diamondbacks fans, whether they're raised to be Pirates fans or Dodgers fans or this or that. Their love for their hometown team, I think, will eventually supersede that. And that's maybe getting a little bit too much into some other topics. But guys, I'm just super excited for what this team might bring. And next year, we're going to bring you recaps every 2 weeks of the Diamondbacks season, as we did throughout this season. We're going to start doing that for the Phoenix Suns starting this week. Diamondbacks, Suns, Cardinals, we do every single week, every Sunday or Monday or Thursday. I don't think they have any primetime games this year, so I think it's all Sundays for us. So Monday morning, you can check out Monday through Wednesday. We'll say a Monday through Wednesday time frame of when you can expect Cardinals.
I was going to say, man, there's too much going on throughout the week. We got to make sure we're getting it to the people early before Joshua Dobbs is anointed the savior. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, a couple weeks ago, Tallman was about to shave his eyebrows and his head, and really embrace the Josh Dobbs experience. And I'm glad that he didn't, because he is on the Vikings now. Had a killer game. Oh my goodness! Make sure you check out our recap that we're going to be posting here in the coming days. But I want to thank anyone who's watching back on the replay, especially if you made it this far in the video. Anyone who's tuning in live. I'm Chris Patrick. For Michael Benjamin and VSP Tallman, we wish you a good evening. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Peace.